For the most part, they don't really call me he or she. They kind of just gesture towards me and say, hey. They don't, I mean, really, my older sister, Amanda, who was in the film, that was the one that was always supportive, she calls me Tyler, introduces me as her brother. My mother, also, who's very religious, has just totally called me Tyler, introduces me to people as her son. She has absolutely no problem with that. The rest of them, they're coming around. My younger sister, who you saw in the film, has made no progress, and I don't know if she will or won't. I think it'll take an epic moment in her life to do that. But for the most part, they don't really say he or she. They just go, hey. So, you know, you just gotta roll with the punches. I mean, like I said in the film, I don't care if they call me Audra. That's irrelevant. I love the name Audra. It's a beautiful name. I still feel like Audra is me. But as long as they don't call me she and they don't disrespect me, I have no problem with what they do. So I think that if I had a sibling or a child that was like this, even I would struggle. Even being me now, fully transitioned, if I had a child that decided, you know, didn't decide, but ended up being transgender, transsexual, or anybody else that I immediately love, I would even still, it would be hard for me, because I would know what they would have to go through, and I'd also have to adjust myself. And I think that's in human nature. You have to adjust to the situation, and sometimes that can be hard. So I don't blame them. In many ways, I don't respect what they do, but I don't blame them for the way that they act. So.
Our next question, please.
Right here. This is for Tyler as well. Can you explain a little more about the legal stuff you had to go through, like getting the new birth certificate, and you said they didn't accept Audra as a unisex name?
So, from a legal perspective, in order for you to change your gender on a birth certificate, you have to appear in court, and you have to file paperwork and all of those things. Just like somebody who just got married, they have to file a name change. Well, the transgender people typically have to appear in court, and there's a level of proof that has to be provided in order for them to actually get their birth certificate changed. So I had a letter from the surgeon that performed my breast surgery, my double mastectomy. I had to appear in court. I had to provide documents that said that I had been living as a male for such and such years. So they don't just, you can't just walk in and file paperwork and boom, it's done. So it was about a 9-month process, and really it's pretty extensive. So nobody can just walk in. I think a lot of people think it's a very frivolous process and you just walk in and do it, and it's not like that at all. You have to have doctors and mental health professionals and things like that are willing to vouch for the fact that you are transgender, you're not mentally ill, and this is something that is going to be a permanent change in your life. So all of that takes place in the court system. So it's pretty complicated. And just so you know, I don't know how many of you know this, but there are several states in this country that don't allow transgender people to change their birth certificates. So Nathan, who was in the film, he actually wasn't born in Seattle, he was born in Tennessee. And he, at this point, has not been able to change his birth certificate, and he will never be allowed to get legally married until Tennessee changes that law. And so if any of you have ever been to Tennessee, you'll know how hard that will probably be. So Nathan, still on his birth certificate, is Jennifer. The only thing that has changed for him is his driver's license. So he was able to get a driver's license that says Nathan, and I, at this point, don't even know if it says male. I'm not sure.
My prior life, before going to law school, I was the director of the Gay Pride Parade in Nashville, Tennessee. So I could tell you that that's a struggle.
Our next question, please.
I wondered, you just briefly sort of, you made me think of a question while you were talking, but is there like a statute there where it says like you have to have been living as male for a certain amount of time, like you had like 2 years as a guy, or just like you've been really good at being a guy for like 6 months since like
Yes.
There are tryouts, just so you know. No, that's a really good question. Every state is different. There's something called WPATH. It's a long acronym. I'm not going to say it, all of it, but what it is they promote the Harry Benjamin standards of care, which basically dictate to transsexual people and mental health professionals what steps need to be taken before they're allowed to inject hormones or take hormones. and also to get surgeries and things like that. So a mental health professional under the Harry Benjamin Standards of Care has to sign off on a transsexual before they can get gender reassignment surgery. And so the mental health profession is involved in determining whether or not this person is able to make that decision. And I know that sounds really wacky, but really it provides a structure, it slows everything down. In a lot of ways, people may think that that's bureaucratic, but in a way, I think that that's healthy. I think the transgender person, regardless of where they're at in their process, really needs to do some deep introspection before all of this takes place. I thought that I was prepared. I mean, I am incredibly organized, very well-researched person, and I really felt like I was ready. And I never regret when I started to transition, but there were things that came up for me that I never anticipated were going to come up for me. And so somebody who was even less prepared than I was, I can't imagine how dark some of their days must be. So I think that there's a structure in place for a reason. Now, it's important to understand, too, that the Harry Benjamin Standards of Care are not legally mandated. They're a recommendation. You can go to any number of therapists, get a letter. I mean, I went to 6 different therapists that were willing to write me a letter the day that they met me. And I wanted to go to a therapist that was going to make me wait and make sure that I was mentally stable enough to do this. And so that's the scary part of that question that you're asking, is that some people can just walk into a therapist and get a letter that day because the therapist thinks, oh, well, I can determine right now, this is who you are. But I think that there's a necessary part where you need to slow down and really think about what you're doing, because we've had people transition that never should have, and that are really going through some mental health complications because of that. And so your question's a loaded question. There's no legal mandates, but there are internationally recognized recommendations.